The Angels have a new hitting coach, so will it solve the strikeout issues?
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. Hey, Brady Anderson and Jon Mabry are the new hitting coaches. One is a hitting coach, Brady Anderson, Jon Mabry, assistant coach, and they're going to be the hitting coaches for the Halos. So they're going to solve the strikeout issues because we can't strike out 1,600 times this next season. And the Angels got ripped apart by the baseball media last week. And was it justified? Plus, John's got a really good rant to share with us. And Grayson Rodriguez told us exactly how he feels about joining the Angels. We'll share that with you. But before we get there, we want to thank our sponsor, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5. And if you bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're in our fifth off season. We just finished our fourth season as the host of Locked On Angels, of course, and now we're talking Angels baseball Monday through Friday with you over this off season. Lots to talk about, of course. Hope you enjoyed the episode with Connor Newcomb of Locked On Orioles. He's one of my favorite other Locked On hosts to listen to, and he does a great job covering the Orioles. And he gave us some great insight into the Orioles side of things and perhaps why Grayson Rodriguez was traded. And because that was kind of the big question, Mike was like, why would the Orioles do this? Well, he did a great job in kind of, speculating, but also coming from a place of having watched the team every single day like we do for the Angels. So check out that episode if you didn't get a chance to catch that. Now, on to more recent Angels news. We finally know who the hitting coach will be and the assistant hitting coach will be, Mike.
Yeah, Brady Anderson's going to be the hitting coach next season, and Jon Mabry will be the club's assistant hitting coach. Now, Brady Anderson had 15 years in the major leagues. He was hired by the Baltimore Orioles as vice president of baseball operations, and he held that position, John, from 2013 until 2019, until he stepped down after just one season under current GM Mike Elias.
I had to think about when Brady Anderson got hired. I was like, wait, that Brady Anderson? And sure enough, it was him.
Yeah. Now, he did play a significant role under the previous general manager, which was Dan Duquette, but there was a difference of opinion for the vision of the team when Elias was brought to the front office and Anderson didn't really mesh well with him. And he has not really worked in affiliated baseball since moving on from the Orioles. And then Jon Mabry, he played 14 years in the majors, John, and he was a hitting coach with the St. Louis Cardinals, the Kansas City Royals, and the Miami Marlins. And he coached with the Marlins as recently as 2024. He worked with the Orioles in 25. He joined the staff in an advisory role after jobs were shuffled around when Brandon Hyde was fired.
Yeah, I looked back at some of the teams that Mabry coached, and some of those St. Louis Cardinals teams were tops in OPS, tops in batting average, that sort of thing. So that was promising, to say the least. Now, Anderson and Mabry are going to work with an Angels offense that finished 25th in scoring last season. We've also discussed this many times on the show. An MLB high 27.1% strikeout rate and a 225 batting average, worst in the league. A 298 on base percentage, only better than the Rockies and the Guardians. And then, of course, they were middle of the pack in terms of slugging percentage. And while they had the fourth most home runs in Major League Baseball behind the Yankees, Dodgers, and Mariners, well, didn't do them so good, did it, Mike?
No, it didn't at all. And that's what's interesting about that slugging percentage. It just meant that they were hitting home runs, but they weren't significant home runs, and they weren't getting doubles. They weren't getting triples. They weren't taking multiple bases when they were at the plate. Now, we don't know much about Brady Anderson and his hitting philosophy. Now, Jon Heyman did tweet when the news came out that they hired Brady as the main hitting coach, and Jon Heyman said, this is a terrific hire. That was his opinion.
Is Brady Anderson a Scott Boras client? Is that why he said that?
Yeah, that was the question in everybody's mind. He said he's going to bring energy, enthusiasm, and, of course, know-how. Then he shared that he texted with Kurt Suzuki, and Kurt texted him back and said, yes, I'm excited about Brady. He's going to be great. Once we get the whole staff rounded out, we'll definitely talk more about it. I appreciate it. Now, I remember Brady Anderson And I remember his 50 home run season. That was a unique season for Brady Anderson.
Tell us why it was unique, Michael.
It was right in the middle of the steroid era of baseball, and Brady Anderson hadn't topped more than 20 plus home runs in his career up until that point. Leadoff hitter, hit 50 home runs, knocked in over 100 RBIs, an incredible
season too, didn't he?
Say that again?
Stole a lot of bags too, didn't he?
Yeah, he was a good base runner for the Orioles, and he was on those teams with Roberto Alomar and Cal Ripken Jr., and they'd had some really good teams in Baltimore in the 90s. Weren't able to go very far, but they had some really good teams. So looking back at what he did in his career, because he really doesn't have a hitting coach philosophy that we can look back on right now, he was a guy that kind of sprayed the ball all over the place, left-handed hitter that could hit lefties, John, and he could, again, spray the ball all over the place. He knew when to pull the ball, and that 150 home run season was a unique season, but he did capitalize on first pitch fastballs. And so he might have some good influence over guys like Nolan Schanuel, who is a lefty, who is learning how to grow. I think that Jon Mabry and adding Jon Mabry to this lineup and to the coaching staff was a brilliant move, because Anderson's going to be maybe the main voice. But as you and I know, Jon Mabry, being an assistant coach, will have a heavy voice as well. And you brought up some stats of the teams that he was the hitting coach for, including the St. Louis Cardinals. And on-base percentage was important. OPS was important. And all of the stats that we would hope the Angels would improve in, the teams that Jon Mabry was leading and helping to coach their hitting philosophy, they were really good, weren't they?
Yeah, and it certainly bodes well in the fact that you've got Brady Anderson, who doesn't have the direct coaching experience, but you have the backup of Jon Mabry, who can tell him, hey, here's how we need to communicate this. Here's how we need to practice for this, try this, that sort of thing. So I think between the two of them, you've got a good thing going. Mike, I'm curious to see what kind of philosophy they'll bring to the table, if any, right? When Johnny Washington and Barry Enright were hired prior to the 2024 season, they both interviewed with Sam Blum of The Athletic, and Barry Enright was pretty forthright about the fact that, hey, this team needs to throw strikes. Yep. That's what they need to do. And I think he accomplished that goal, right, Mike? They were 10th in strikeouts as a pitching staff, which was kind of the only highlight. And so at some point they accomplished that, despite getting buy-in from the players or not getting buy-in. You know, some guys struggled with that, like Reed Detmers did in 2024. Johnny Washington, on the other hand, didn't really have a all-encompassing philosophy when he spoke to Sam Blum. He said, I'm going to work with the individual guys, highlight their strengths, all the things you would want to hear.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was so odd to hear what he had to say prior to 2025 and beyond, because when they were struggling offensively and he was asked about his approach and what he was communicating to the players, it became a one-size-fits-all philosophy of you got to end the at-bat when you need to end the at-bat. Essentially, you got to look for that one pitch and do some damage on it. We've said this many times that the pitcher on the mound is not going to give you that one pitch all the time. They're not trying to give you that one pitch all the time. And if they do, it's a mistake pitch. I understand the philosophy. Yeah, take advantage of a mistake pitch. But how many times did we watch somebody like a Taylor Ward or a Mike Trout look at that mistake pitch and let it go right by for a ball or a strike or what have you? So it'll be interesting to see what these guys bring to the table, what they say, what they communicate, how they'll communicate, what they think of individual players. Can they help Logan O'Hoppe get back to who he was at the dish? Even the Logan O'Hoppe from the first few weeks of the season, right? Didn't he have 14 home runs through, the early part of the season? And so I think that there is some optimism between these two guys. And look, if they want to put somebody like Rendon on PEDs and he has to eat the 80 game suspension and he's good for 80 games or for as many games before that, that's fine with me, right? Is that okay? Can we do that?
Yeah, who knows if he'll even get out there with the PEDs. That guy is so broken up. But when it comes to somebody like a Brady Anderson and a Jon Mabry, the hope always is going to be that they would help this team to improve and make contact instead of a lot of swings and misses. I wonder if Johnny Washington's supposed change in philosophy from 24 to 25 had to do with some front office communication. And we've talked about how Perry Manassian really prioritized, right? Slugging percentage and OPS, those types of things. But I think that with Brady Anderson and with John Mabry, they're coming in with what I would assume, Mabry more than Anderson, what I would assume is, let's make some contact, guys. And I think that they should just sit them down and show them the Toronto Blue Jays throughout the playoffs and what they did, because they made contact when it was needed and when it was necessary. And then maybe they need to go back and watch the games against the Pirates and the games against the Tampa Bay Rays when they were just hitting us and dinking and dunking us all over the place. That's why they beat us in those series. I know the Angels had some series where they were hitting a lot of home runs against the Rays, but that's not what you want to see from this team. What you want to see from this team is consistent offensive explosion 1 through 9, whether it is a home run, which I will take from a Mike Trout or a Joe Adele, but I would love to see singles and I would love to see more doubles, John, honestly, from this team. And I think that that's where Logan O'Hoppe can thrive, is when he focuses on being a gap to gap guy. And when he does that, he's going to make contact, level out those swings, guys. Let's put aside exit velocity for some of the guys, but more importantly, let's put aside the lift on the ball and what you're trying to get it out over the wall. Again, home runs are fun, but they didn't do much for us last season. It's why I'm not heartbroken that the stats that Taylor Ward brought are not going to be in this lineup next year. The person, I'm a fan of the person, but the stats feel like they can be easily repeatable if you have guys like O'Hoppe and Schanuel and maybe a Christian Moore and perhaps somebody like a full season with Zach Neto. You're going to be able to replicate some of those numbers and make a difference with all of those guys instead of one of those guys. It's really going to be about getting on base. And so I hope that the philosophy that they pound into these guys starting now and into spring training is, I need you to get on base by any means necessary, because they didn't have many people on base, and the home run totals being as high as they were, and yet the on base percentage and the batting average being as low as they were, that's very telling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one final point here is the fact that Brady Anderson has not had hitting coach experience in the past. Well, everybody's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
They don't often start in the major leagues, right? They kind of work their way through the minor league system and whatnot. But he's got a lot of front office experience. And
Exactly.
I think that he brings to the table maybe the translation of some of those things that they're looking for, stats and analytics and things like that. He can help communicate that well to the players, and then Mabry can help implement that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'll say is, Marcus Timms was a very experienced hitting coach. Johnny Washington, a very experienced hitting coach, and even why can't I think of his name right now? The one before that.
That's how much impact he had on us, right?
That's right. And we've talked about him a whole bunch of how he was before and after Perry Manassian. It's just slipping away right now. But all that to say, we've had guys with a lot of experience. And so it'll be interesting to see if Brady Anderson can bring a fresh perspective to all of this. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, oh boy, the Angels were ripped to shreds by baseball media over a physical. We're going to talk about that in just a minute.
How about some NBA action? There's no better place to get in on all of the NBA action than with FanDuel. They are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. FanDuel keeps everything exciting, even while you're watching your favorite team make that late game push. And right now, if you're a new customer, FanDuel's giving $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So get started at FanDuel.com. You can sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network out there. And we thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Jeremy Reed. Stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It was Jeremy Reed. Come on, John. You're not stupid. I'm stupid. That's what I'm calling myself.
The reason why I didn't say anything is because I was like, what is it? Who is it? I couldn't remember. Yeah. On the spot, man. It's hard.
Exactly. Check us out wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, whether you're watching or listening, get in on the conversation by coming over to YouTube, find today's episode, get in the comments section. While you're there, hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps out our channel. It helps Mike and I out directly. Also hit us up on social media at Locked On Angels, at Super Halo Bros, wherever you like to social your medias, and we'll continue our discussion online with you guys.
John, Jim Bowden, former general manager, now on foul territory, writes for The Athletic. His favorite song is "Physical" by Olivia Newton-John, because he talked about that all weekend long. He tweeted that the Angels didn't ask for a physical in the trade for Grayson Rodriguez, said it was ridiculous. He mentioned this on Foul Territory and why he tweeted it. And fans jumped all over it because it was about the Angels. And, anytime you can take a crap on the Angels, the fans will do that, right? And then Jeff Fletcher, our buddy from the OC Register, tweeted and said very logically, very reasonably, because that's who he is, because that's how trades work. You only get to do an in-person physical when you sign a free agent for a trade. You don't get to review documentation, MRIs, etc. Then some rando tweeted right back at Jeff Fletcher because they think they know more. And they said, don't you don't normally get one for an injured player, but you can. And Fletch said, I'm told by GMs, multiple GMs, not just from the Angels, that it would be very rare to request an in-person physical to complete a trade, and would probably be one when a big contract is being signed or someone's being moved, but it's very, very rare. Now, lots of commentary on typical Angels on social media, right? And then Jim Bowden yesterday doubled down and said, no, this is how it is. This is how it works. This is how we do it, right? And just kind of doubled down on that and said that I'm shocked. I'm still shocked, right? But it feels like the Angels didn't do anything out of the ordinary. In fact, I saw a great tweet between some Texas Rangers and Mets fans, and then Angels fans jumped into that when they made the trade for Marcus Semien and Brandon Nimmo. All the fans were like, where's the physicals? Got to see the physicals, right? And so it's now become a thing. But John, this is interesting that this rises to the surface, and it's interesting that it's Jim Bowden, because you have some thoughts about how he approaches all 30 teams, but specifically how he approaches the Angels.
Well, here's the thing about Jim Bowden, the failed GM with a bad haircut. Mr. Haircut thinks that he still knows it all, even though he hasn't been a GM in about 16 years and, had to step down in disgrace because apparently he was skimming money off of international free agent signings and yada, yada, yada. Didn't go anywhere except that he had to step down because he didn't want to be a distraction from the Washington Nationals, Michael, who happened to have a 58 and 111 sort of 114 season or something like that. Just 58 wins, right? So here's the thing that I really dislike about what Jim Bowden, aka Mr. Haircut, said. Lloyd Christmas haircut. The fact is that sure, they could have requested a physical, but as we've seen and as we've heard, it's not commonplace, and that's fine. And maybe in a situation like this with Grayson Rodriguez, you do want to complete a physical, but the fact that he is getting all up in arms because the Angels didn't have Grayson Rodriguez turn his head and cough, right? And Jim Bowden is freaking out about that. Maybe he didn't need a physical, Mike. Maybe they know that removing bone spurs from your elbow is a pretty standard procedure. Maybe the lat strain that he's been dealing with is like everybody said. The Orioles, Grayson Rodriguez himself said, hey, you know what? I think my body was overcompensating, and so I was straining my lat because of those bone spurs in my elbow. Great. You probably got that information from all the medical stuff that the Baltimore Orioles had on Grayson Rodriguez. You probably got that in all the files. You probably were able to look at all that stuff, and it was probably just fine and dandy. So for Jim Bowden to freak out about this is absolutely ridiculous. And the truth is, whenever he speaks about the Angels, whether he's writing for The Athletic or whether it's something else, it's very frustrating to me because he'll do a rundown of, maybe he'll do something like, what every team needs this offseason, right? And he'll go through all 30 teams and he'll go into great detail and great length about 29 other teams. And then when it comes to the Angels, it's, they don't know what they're doing. Artie's got to sell a team. It's all the same crap you hear all the time that Angel fans already know. Now, would I like to hear his opinion on what the Angels need to do in the offseason, for example? No, not really. Not with a haircut like that. I think it's connected to his brain at this point, and it's zapping the life out of him. But here's what I'll say. How am I supposed to take you seriously when it comes to stuff like this, when your bit is constantly pouring on the Angels, when your bit is, oh, I'm going to go into detail about all 29 other teams, but then when the Angels come along, they should have traded Ohtani back in 23, right? It's the same tired takes over and over again, because you're out of material, bro. You're out of material. You got nothing left. You've got a GM title from 16 years ago that you're still standing on. When I was a GM, I asked for physicals all the time. Great. Were you in the office with them? Is that what was going on there? Because you're starting to weird me out, dude. So here's what I'll say. Whatever this bit is that Bowden has against the Angels, it really does a disservice to the fact that there are plenty of things to criticize the Angels about. But when you have to go reaching and you got to have a clickbait tweet or a clickbait story or a clickbait response just because you're irrelevant and you haven't been relevant for 16 years, maybe the fact that the Angels have been so irrelevant the last 10 years, he finds some solace in that because he's like, oh, they're like me, irrelevant. And there are plenty of things to pile on the Angels about. And the truth is, Mike, we need people to pile on the Angels about some stuff. The Skaggs trial, ownership, all of that, the lack of accountability in this organization, what's going on with the stadium, right? The audit and all of that. We need accountability. We need other teams and other team fans to call out the Angels, but not for stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because it's neither here nor there. And so if you really want to call the Angels out about something, make it about Artie Moreno. Make it about the disservice they're doing to Tyler Skaggs and his family, right? Make it about the fact that they let somebody stay employed until it resulted in someone's death. And now that person's life is over. Tyler Skaggs' life is over. His family's life is ruined, right? All this stuff. There's way more things to criticize the Angels about. And for Mr. Haircut to make this the problem, you have no credibility with me. You have nothing interesting to say to me. I love reading The Athletic. I'll read Keith Law. Of course, I'll read our buddy Sam Blum. Of course, there's a lot of good coverage on there. Eno Saris does a lot of great fantasy stuff, but Jim Bowden, pass. I can skip over that article. In fact, I'm going to write to the New York Times and see if I can get a discount for every Jim Bowden article that comes out on The Athletic. So that's my rant, Mr. Haircut. I'm sorry that Grayson Rodriguez didn't take a physical, and I'm sorry that you got so up in arms about it for the last 72 hours? Are we past that in 96 hours? Is that what we're up to now, Mike?
Yeah. It feels like every time he talks about the Angels, this is the analogy that comes to mind, that the house is blown up, but he's complaining that we can't find the remote. Every time he talks about the Angels, it feels like you're talking about the thing that really doesn't mean that much. Yeah. You need to talk about the things that mean that much. And so I would say to the baseball media that's much larger than us, like, then bring all that pressure on Artie Moreno. But you're not going to do that because you're afraid of hurting your relationship with the owners, because maybe you're wanting to get hired again. And that's the reality of why he says the things that he says, and they don't go after Artie Moreno. Someone died in the organization and someone was doing illegal drugs and passing illegal drugs for 20 years. Maybe that should be the priority, right? Not if they had a physical for a young man who said he's great, and they get to look at the MRIs and get to look at all of the results of what he's been through after the surgery. I get that Perry Manassian can get a lot of critique because he hasn't won in 5 years. I get that.
Yeah.
And the critique.
Yeah.
The critique is deserved. But when you look at some of the smarter, reasonable baseball minds out there, 9 out of 10 of them said this was a really great trade for the Angels.
Yep.
Also a really great trade for the Orioles, but a really great trade for the Angels if Grayson stays healthy. And isn't that the case with anybody? And right now, what I find interesting is that there are fans that will say, nobody wants to come here. And then when they make a trade to bring somebody here that has great potential, they're like, well, he needs to be, Cy Young Greg Maddux, or he needs to be Paul Skeens, or you keep telling me that nobody wants to come here and we're not going to get any good players. And then when they try to get a good player who has great potential, but has this injury history, that's a problem too. Maybe they should just shut the team down. Maybe they shouldn't play at all next year.
Right.
Maybe they shouldn't have a team in Anaheim at all. I mean, that's the reality of where people go. It's never a win for a lot of these fans. And fans will say, well, that's because they haven't won and that's because they deserve it. And I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not even going to push back at that. But when they do something good, we have to go, hey, that was good. That was a really good trade. They got rid of a 1-year guy and they got 4 years of a young guy who could potentially lead this starting rotation. And isn't that what you wanted from Shohei Ohtani? And isn't that what you wanted from Luis Rengifo? And isn't that what you wanted from all of these other guys? And they did that. They just didn't do it the way that you would do it because the MLB, the show, allowed you to trade Bonds and Griffey and not give up that much, right? That's not how it works in real life. And in real life, this is actually a good trade. Yeah, there's questions, but this was actually a good trade for our Halos.
When you said they should shut the team down, I was like, did Mike just pull the equivalent of dad turning the car around? I'm turning this thing around. We're going home. We're not doing it anymore.
Now, everyone was caught up in the news about how Grayson Rodriguez didn't have a physical, and he wasn't even thrown by that. When he was asked about it, he was like, "No, they didn't. We just we moved on." And he wasn't even thrown by that. And they're like, "What?"
Because
what?
Mike, it's not Tommy John surgery. He didn't have back surgery. He's had a lat injury that logically makes sense when your elbow hurts and your body's overcompensating. You ever have a strange pain in like your knee because your back hurts? It's your body overcompensating. Trust me, I got a lot of knee pain and a lot of back pain, and I'm 36 years old, and I know what that's like. So there you go.
Yeah, and it was just interesting to see the response. And then they didn't like his second response, and they didn't make a comment about it, but you could just tell that maybe they didn't like his second response, because when Grayson was asked about if he's excited about joining the Angels, how he feels about that, he said he's pumped up. And all the hosts were like, oh, right? Which, is that what you want to say when you join a team? Absolutely. Is that what fans want to hear? Absolutely. But he said, I'm excited. He said, I spoke with Neto, Ohapi, and others, and I'm ready to help the Angels win. He said, I want to help them get to October and play in October. And he said, if I'm not wanting to do that, then what's the point of playing? Mm-hmm. He said, I'm excited about being here and getting pumped up to get started. I love this. And by the way, Matty V on MLB Network added this thought. He said, the more I think about it, the more I love this trade for the Angels. There's a chance that Grayson Rodriguez turns into a Zach Wheeler type or a Nathan Eovaldi type. So those are two interesting comparisons. John, I'd love your thoughts on those two names compared to a Grayson Rodriguez.
Let me ask you this. Would you have taken Tyler Glasnow when he was on the Rays?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
I think Glasnow has accomplished and done about as much before he got traded to the Dodgers. I think he was in a very similar situation, Mike. I think Grayson Rodriguez will be like a Tyler Glasnow. Will he have some injury problems? Yeah, probably. But when he's on the mound, he's anybody's ace. I mean, I know Glasnow is on a team of aces, but any other team, Glasnow is the frontline starter for that team. And so that's kind of my comparison there. But when you go and look at what Grayson Rodriguez has been able to do when he's healthy, he does end up in those categories with like Zach Wheeler and Nate Eovaldi. We had an everydayer share what he was able to do in a minimum of 110 innings in 2024, and he was up there with the likes of Paul Skeens in what he was able to do. So to me, I like those comparisons, but here's what I'll say. Is he going to say that he's pumped to join the Angels? Of course. But here's why I think it's important that Locked On exists as a network and that there are individual hosts for every individual team, whether it's football or basketball or hockey or college stuff. People are locked on their team. That's why we're called Locked On, and we're Locked On Angels. And when Connor told me yesterday that he felt like there was some tension between Grayson Rodriguez and Mike Elias, and perhaps there was a timeline issue of, hey, Grayson, maybe you should get the elbow cleaned up. And he thought, well, I've pitched through it before. I could do it again. And then, it caused the lat to be injured and whatnot. Like you said it the other day, Mike, it's kind of like Griffin Canning, where it was like, you know what? The Angels, they're just going to give up on Griffin Canning. They're going to make the trade. They're going to use him to get some slugging power from Jorge Soler. Obviously, Soler did not have a great season. And then Griffin Canning was let go by the Braves and signed with the Mets. And here we are. He had a great half of the season before he got injured. And so, yeah, maybe it's a change of scenery kind of thing. Maybe it's an opportunity for somebody to say, hey, we want Grayson here in Anaheim. And maybe he sees that and acknowledges that and goes, wow, hey, I was worth Taylor Ward. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think that can do a lot for a player. Do people want to come to Anaheim? Well, you have this argument every offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at the end of the day, free agents are going to take the money and they're going to take the location and they're going to take the comfort and they're going to take what's best for their family. So if, Kyle Tucker wants to live on the West Coast and be an Angel and not go anywhere, but he's comfortable making a ton of money for him and his family, and he's got a beach house in Newport, right? He's going to be just fine. And to get somebody like this via trade where that fact doesn't factor in, it's, no, you got to be here because we traded for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty significant. But to hear him say, like, he's pumped to be here, man, can we just root that he has a healthy season? Can we root for the fact that, maybe the injury issues have been figured out? Maybe that the Orioles are in win now mode and the Angels are not, and the Angels have some time and they can buy some time with Grayson Rodriguez to say, hey, you know what? Even if 2026 doesn't go that well, we still got 27, we still got 28, we still got 29. I know it's redundant to say all the years, but I just really want to drive the point home that he's going to be on an innings limit. That's no doubt.
Yeah.
And maybe he does go on the IL. Okay. But we still got him 3 more years, and he still has a lot of road to cover when it comes with his time with the Angels. So am I worried about injuries? No, not really. Because again, we've got him for the next 4 years. And I think that's a really good place to be in my opinion.
Yeah, I like him. I like having him in the starting rotation. And I think I like his ceiling, and his ceiling is ace potential. And we don't have that in the starting rotation. Jorge Soriano potentially could be somebody. If Reed Detmers ever figures it out, potentially be somebody. But Grayson Rodriguez has already got 2 years where he was kind of skimming, touching number 2, moving towards number 1. And I want to hear somebody be excited about being here. Plus, when you're down, there's something about being down, and you kind of have to, you're obligated to be here. Like Ohapi and Neto and all those guys are obligated to be here. Yeah. And then you bring in a Grayson Rodriguez. That's like a shot in the arm. That's like I'm interested in that. Remember in 23, when they made those trades, we heard from some of the players who said it actually kind of fired us up, even though it sucked, even though it went backwards, right? It kind of fired us up. This trade could fire you up because, whoa, he's a potential number 1 guy. And there's all these young guys who haven't really won, and they want to win, and they come from winning environments. And so we can't discount that. Is that drinking some hopium? Absolutely, because that's what we have right now. But I want to look at the good things, and I want to say, hey, this is a good thing. And having this guy in our rotation as often as he can be will be a really good thing in 2026.
Yeah, an injured Grayson Rodriguez who doesn't hit 160 innings in 2026 is better than not having a Grayson Rodriguez in your rotation at all.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Be sure to like and subscribe while you're here. It's the best way to stay updated on all things Angels throughout the offseason.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter, at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Again, whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the comments section, hit that like and subscribe button while you're here. We'd really appreciate hearing from you. We read all the comments and do our best to try to get back to everybody. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Well, the non-tender deadline passed. That means the teams got to offer a contract or not offer a contract to certain players. The Angels didn't offer a contract to 2 people, but then there's also some names outside of the Angels organization that didn't get offered contracts. So we're going to talk about who they didn't offer contracts to, who they did, and maybe there's some players the Angels should check in on. We'll discuss all of that tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. We hope you'll come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
All right, for all the sickos who love this Angels team and the everydayers who like to watch and listen and not miss your haircut, Jim Bowden, we'll see you back here on Wednesday.
Hey, shout out to everydayer Mr. Lemon. It's a real person, listens every day, loves the show.
Love it.